Hello, my name is Arthur, and this is the second video on my channel that is a trans book review. So, I see a lot of people online say that there are not many books that feature trans guys. I found a ton of books that feature trans guys, and trans people in general. They just don't necessarily get a lot of press, so I figured I would make this like an ongoing series on my channel where I talk about trans books and give you guys my opinions. I am in my new apartment now, so I figured what could be a better backdrop than my stack of trans books here. I've read over half of these books, and then I want you guys to know this delightful piece here. So this was my impulse purchase when I was at Ikea setting up my new apartment. Let me click it on. How do I click it on? Is it here? Oh yeah. So this is a light. I was walking by the section that had all the lighting in Ikea, and I saw this group of like hipster type people that were standing around mocking this lamp. And I thought it looked cool, but I was afraid to go check it out because they were mocking it. But my lovely housemate was like, Arthur, you gotta just go for it, make them feel ashamed for mocking it. So I went, I bought it, I was like, it's amazing. Then my other housemate was like, Arthur, why did you buy a lamp that is shaped like an Allen key? So if you don't know, an Allen key, I think I even have one here, are these little guys that you use to assemble Ikea furniture. And I was like, no, that's silly, it's just a light. Turns out it is an Allen key, and it even says as much on the bottom here. So this says something, Allen key lamp. Anyways, so now I'm like a crazy person who's like seems obsessed with, I don't know, furniture construction, whatever. I'm transmasc, you know. This feeds into, I guess, a little masculine piece of decor over here. Anyways, trans books. Back to the subject of this video. So the book I'm going to talk about today is called Once a Girl, Always a Boy. So I picked up this book at Barnes & Noble when I was just there with my friend and I saw it. And I'd heard of it before because, so I was in a trans group chat at my undergrad and I hardly ever met these people, but someone was asking about like, how can you explain being trans to your parents? Like what's a good book for parents? And someone named this book. And they were really hyping it up, so I was like, oh, I'll check this out. My verdict on the book is, if you're a trans individual, I'm not sure I would recommend it. I would not recommend it. Not like it's a bad book. It's just not fun. There are better books. If you're looking for a book for your parents, maybe. I guess it depends on like who your parents are and the kind of relationship you have with them. So my parents are like sort of educated liberal types who, you know, obviously were at first like not knowledgeable, like kind of ignorant in like a definitional sense about trans issues, but really willing to learn and really willing to hear nuance. So when I want to talk to them about trans things, I actually like, I don't like finding books that are like, I mean, even in the title, right? Once a girl, always a boy. It's essentially like the justification of this trans guy as like, you know, defining his whole childhood as like a evidence that he was eventually going to transition. And I don't think that's like the case for me. I had a lot of like gender nonconformity when I was growing up, but especially like to my parents, I don't desire to try to convince them that I was always a boy because, I don't know, they raised me and they like watched me like, I don't know, put on dresses when I was 15, or, you know, they watched me like, you know, they watched all the nuance of that, and I don't desire to try to like force them to repackage my own narrative into this like very conformist narrative. But this might speak to your parents. So what is the book? So it's a family memoir. I didn't get what that meant when I was reading it. So they alternate between perspectives. So it will be the trans guy himself, Jeremy, and his mom, his dad, his brothers, his friends. They go through all these different perspectives, and they basically start like bottom up. So like when Jeremy's a little kid, all the way through like he's 30 and he's fully transitioned. It struck me off the bat that I was like, Jeremy doesn't talk like a normal person in his section. So like, just to pick a little bit, so there's like, this is 18, he's like, talking about applying to college. He's like, Mom helped me investigate college architecture programs, even though I'd pretty much given up on going to college. I'd barely been getting by in my classes, and for a long time couldn't make myself care about filling out applications. And then later he says, eventually Mom insisted that I get the college applications done. She sat by my side, watched me browse through college websites, and didn't leave until I'd submitted several applications. I don't know how to explain it. That just sounded stiff to me, and I'm like, damn, he like really loves his mom. And then, you know, like later on, he's talking about like, I don't know, this is like my sex drive had gone up drastically. I've read stories from trans guys that theirs exploded once they were on hormones. I'm still not attracted to other people sexually, but something more is definitely going on down there. I'm hoping that settles down because it feels weird and I'm not sure how to handle it. He's asexual, which is, you know, the origin of that. Or then like, yeah, later talking about his desire for bottom surgery and, you know, packing, and he says, Mom didn't know it, but I'm not rushing. I've been thinking about this for a while. I even pack some of the time. At first I stuck a sock in my underwear to create a bulge. Nothing super obvious. I didn't want people looking at me and saying, wow, he's hung like a horse. And then later he says, I reached over to the nightstand and pulled out my silicone penis from the top drawer. Bouncing it up and down a little as if I were weighing it, I said, I chose this type because it looks and feels realistic, and it's the right size. That's awesome, Mom said. Awesome? Yeah. Not creepy or weird or anything else bad. My mom thinks it's awesome that I sometimes wear a fake penis in my pants. How cool is that? I don't know, man. I was reading this and I was like, wow, Jeremy's kind of like, I don't know, like, that's kind of not how I would write if I was writing this. It just didn't sound like I don't know, a person to me. Then I get towards the end of this, and so they talk about, so like, again, Jeremy, like, this whole story, like, he's like a really normal dude. Like, I mean, you got this when I read the section about the college applications, but like, he didn't finish college. He like tried like 3 or 4 times. You know, he's working as a barista. He's just kind of like enjoying like hanging out with friends and like rock climbing and like, you know, writing songs and like, I don't know, it seems like he just wants like a chill normal life. He's like asexual, so there's no sort of like romantic drama going on here. Anyways, but that towards the end, there like was an incident involving like sort of discrimination, and his parents like post on Facebook and it goes viral. And so then his mom talks about writing a book towards the end, and this is from the Jeremy section. So she's saying, I think it could be important, she said. It would help build awareness and acceptance. It would tell about your journey and of our journey with you. Clearly she was focused on all the positive things a book could do, not on any of the problems. I could say if there was something I didn't want you to write about, I asked. Absolutely, she said. You'd have veto power over everything. Mom really wanted to do this, and I understood why. Before I had a chance to change my mind, I said, okay. Is that okay you'll think about it, or okay I can do it? You can do it. You can write about me. And then the mom says, okay then, now here's an even tougher question. Will you do it with me? Sure, I said, if I don't have to write. I made Mom so happy, she started pumping her fists in the air. You won't have to write, she said. I've got all your videos, and that can be your voice in the book. Anything else I write in your voice, you can modify it to make it yours. I'm good with that, I said. And just like that, I committed to working on a book with my mom. So, he didn't write any of these sections. That's why they don't sound like the voice of a 30-year-old man. That's why they sound like they're written by the mom. And that's why he sounds like, I love my mom so much and I cannot believe my parents are so accepting, is like, because this isn't Jeremy. And again, maybe like, I don't want to like, if I'm always paranoid, I'm like, that like the author will like watch one of these videos. So Joe, if you're watching this, I think it's like excellent that you wrote this book, and I'm sure this like helped a lot of parents come to accept their children. And I'm just like politely poking fun at this, but that's why all of his sections sound like, you know, they're written by a mom, is because they were written by a mom. And I think that like removes a lot of the nuance in this story, and is because largely, I mean, this is meant for parents. So it's like, it's not for trans people, like by trans people. It is, you know, for parents of trans children by a parent of trans children. So a huge part of the book is also devoted to like the mom justifying like learning to accept her kid, and not like she was ever going to kick him out, but like learning to like believe and trust his decision to transition. And part of the thing she struggles with is something that I know my own mom struggled with, which is like I was a tomboy too, and like why wasn't just being a tomboy enough? And I found that section interesting to read because it's true, she just, and she says this, I wasn't just a tomboy, like she wasn't just a tomboy, it sounded pretty extreme, like she passed herself off as a guy throughout like middle school, and like had her friends believe she was male, used male restrooms, like really denied that she was a girl, like stood in line with the boys, like stuff that, I don't know, that fits a pretty classic trans narrative. And I just like, I don't have as much invested in trying to prove that she wouldn't have transitioned if she grew up these days. Like, that's like a huge part of what she wants to believe, she needs to believe. I don't know, there are more people transitioning these days, right? Like, I mean, this is the case with any group when it gains acceptance, right? Like, when gay people gained acceptance, there were more people who, like, entered in gay relationships, and, like, you know, do I need to prove to every, like, parent that they wouldn't have been happier if they had been in a gay relationship, if they had transitioned, if they had done any, like, life choice? I don't know. I mean, I think all you need to prove is that Jeremy's happy and that Jeremy's making the right choice. Like, you know, maybe it would have been the case that his mom would have identified as non-binary if she grew up these days, or, like, and maybe, you know, that would have worked for her, and that would have been great, but, like, either way, her life is happy now, she's living a happy life now, and living as a woman worked fine for her. Like, I don't believe in any of this sort of deterministic, like, you know, the only way that I could be happy is living as a trans guy. Like, you know, I think that is absolutely what I am personally most happy living as these days, but I could believe that, you know, I don't know, if I'd grown up 20 years ago, I might have like lived as a butch lesbian, and that would have worked really well for me then, and I'm happier now. I'm happy I could transition, but I don't think I need to prove that like counterfactual versions of myself would have absolutely transitioned or wouldn't have transitioned. Gender is a social construct, right? So like, anyways, I just don't have that much skin in the game for proving that the mom, Jo, wouldn't have transitioned. She might have. I mean, who cares? Jeremy's happy these days, so she should be cool with the fact Jeremy transitioned. And she is. She seems like a really wonderful mom. I think this is like a cool thing that she did. Yeah, and she also talks about like learning to accept Jeremy's decision to get top surgery, and how she has to justify this as like not being related to breast augmentation and like, meaning like not being a cosmetic surgery. And again, I know a lot of trans people who have a lot of, care a lot about, you know, viewing transgender surgeries as not cosmetic, but like, I don't know, I've watched videos on YouTube of women who've gotten breast augmentations for whom it's a deeply like important and like spiritual and personal journey. Like, I watched someone who, she struggled with an eating disorder like all throughout her puberty, and so she didn't develop breasts, and so she got breast augmentation effectively as like a reconstructive surgery, and she viewed it as like her finally, in fact, accepting and loving her body, and like as the ultimate like, I am over my eating disorder now, like a gift to herself as a recovery thing. Watching that video, it seemed just as important. I don't need to like justify my desire to get top surgery as like more valid than her desire to get a breast augmentation. Like, there are all sorts of reasons people get surgeries, and I just, you know, I think you gotta trust each individual. These different sections, like where she's like, oh, you know, he's not mutilating himself, I've learned it's because he's inside the deep spirit of a man and the deep pain in him. You know, I'm like, I don't know, he wants to get it, his life's better, he's been to therapy, like, that's fine. So there's just a lot of this book that's devoted to kind of parent-type narratives of learning to be cool with things that I just, not really how I broach these kinds of subjects myself. I think this could be good for your parents, right? Like, if your parents are the type where they're educated, willing to listen, really want a narrative that is like black and white, right? You know those people that need black and white kind of thinking. And I think this book does do well with that. And again, it does like offer some nuance of like, Jeremy wasn't literally always like the most conforming masculine guy. There were times where he tried to be more feminine, and they do talk about that. But I think this could be, you know, if you want your parents to really like land on that like once a girl, always a boy kind of thing, and like you think that's somewhere they can land, this book might really speak to them, and it might like, I think it's good for moms, right? That like moms that were tomboys, like, right? Like, Jo talks a lot about her own feelings, and I just think that could be really nice for you. And the other thing I really liked about the book was they have this book club discussion guide at the end, which is a series of questions, and I thought these were like excellent questions. I really was a huge fan of this. So they say like, question number 1, what does it mean to be transgender? Question number 2, what were the first signs in early childhood that Jeremy was transgender? Question number 3, how would you feel if your child didn't conform to society's gender stereotypes? Question number 4, when did you first know your own gender? Question number 5, what might Jo and John have done differently as parents if they'd recognized earlier that Jeremy was transgender? What would you have done? Question number 6, how could you explain the difference between sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression to someone new to the vocabulary? And there's a handful more questions, and they're just, I think these are good questions. I really like this. So, yeah, most likely, if you're watching this video, you're a trans person, or LGBT generally, you don't need to read this book. But, you know, yeah, if you're looking for a book to, you know, introduce your parents to, might want to check it out. Either way, I think it was kind of a hilarious read when I finally got to the end and realized that all of the Jeremy sections were written by his mom, and that explains a lot. Just the like language of his mom saying like hung like a horse, and I was just like, oh my god, it's so funny. But yeah, not the worst thing ever. Seems like a good public service. Yeah.